Good morning, everyone. I am so excited to be presenting this session today. The downside of all of these kinds of webinars is that I don't get to see all of you. I don't get to see your reactions. I don't get to see what you're thinking, what you're feeling as we go through these presentations. So we're going to try something a little bit different today. If you wouldn't mind, just from an orientation point of view, you are going to see that you have some controls that allow you to actually add questions into the chat window on the right-hand side of your screen. So wouldn't you mind just clicking on that button right now, opening that up, and in that little window, just telling us, are you in the sales team, the marketing team, the customer service team, some kind of a delivery team of sorts, or even in IT? Wouldn't you mind just putting that information in that window right now as a bit of a test run? I have got someone that's working with me on the presentation. I'll mention them in a second. And what they're going to do is have a look through, and in a second, they're going to let us know exactly what the sort of distribution is of all of the folks who have joined the call so far. So we're going to get right into it. What we're talking about today is bots and virtual agents. And we're looking specifically at what is happening during lockdown and what are we seeing from a trend point of view. So by way of introduction, before we get into that, my name is Paul Slade, and I am one of the co-founders here at the CRM team. We were bought out by First Technology a few years ago, and as a result, we are now part of that family, and we're very privileged to be part of that. And obviously today, we're going to be co-presenting the actual webinar with First Tech KZN and with my co-founder, Wynand Roos. Now, the two of us have been in CRM longer than you can even imagine. When I actually first met Wynand, he had a lot more hair than he has right now. We do have one fun photo of him wearing a wig, but I thought it was inappropriate to put up today. I might share that with you secretly if you send me an email afterwards. I'll deny that I ever sent it to you, but we'll deal with that at a later stage. But we've been in CRM for so long now that we've had the opportunity to work with Microsoft, with Salesforce, with SaaS, with SAP, and inside of those organizations, as well as with their customers. And over time, as we've built up our own business, the CRM team, with many of the great customers that you see on the right-hand side of your screen right now. And we've got great stories to tell, incredible case studies. Some of them are global case studies with Microsoft right now, including Vitality Life in the UK, where we were able to completely transform their lead conversion rates from sort of 18% up to about 36, 37% on a consistent basis. And that's just by doing the right things, using technology to help the people on the ground who are attempting to achieve their daily objectives. Throughout this entire presentation, we'll share things like where our website is, the crmteam.com. You can go there. It's a great resource for so much information, but we can always engage on a one-on-one basis as well. You can either reach out to us through our website, or we'll share some direct contacts a bit later on. But right now, the CRM team is very, very focused on the Microsoft ecosystem. And the reason for that is when we started this business almost 5 years ago now, we really thought a lot about which platform would we bet our business on? And also, which platform would we bet our customers' business on? Because frankly, that's what we're doing when we're implementing a solution for the kinds of companies that you see on screen right now. We evaluated all of the platforms, and we chose Microsoft because of the commitment that the team in Redmond in Seattle were actually giving us directly, saying, hey, this is what we're doing over the next 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And we're seeing so much of those commitments actually come to fruition right now. It is incredibly exciting, and it's transforming the kinds of solutions that we're building for our customers. And by the way, in many cases right now, it's not about using code. It's actually about drag and drop and click no code type editing. We're going to show you a couple of those today. But before we get into all of that and we talk about some of the tech, what we always say is that CRM is a strategy first, and it's a strategy enabled by technology. And so many companies would say to us, but Paul, but Wynand, this is hard for us to understand. I mean, these are complex things. We've got to wrap our minds around it. We've got to engage consulting firms, and we've got to pay millions to try and figure out what our strategy is. But if you boil it down to its essentials, you're going to see it's only these components that you see on screen right now. So let's talk about engaging your customer. And just before I do that, I'd love to see, have you actually used the chat window on the right-hand side of the screen? Wynand, what have we got in terms of distribution?
So we've got a pretty even distribution, quite a few folks. So we've got a distribution between sales and marketing. We've got quite a few folks in IT, and then quite a few folks in operations and quality control, ISO management, etc. So it's quite an even split sales, marketing, IT, and operations.
That is amazing. And you know what I love about that is that you're representing the entire business, because everybody in the business actually owns the strategy. Whether you're in IT and you're trying to provide solutions into the marketing and sales team, or if you're in ISO and governance and compliance teams and trying to make sure that we're meeting standards, you're all working together for one objective, and that's to serve your customer. So the customer is really at the middle of this entire structure that we have. And we call this the CRM circle. It's something we invented a few years ago, but it's based on all of our learnings and research over many, many years. Now, around that customer, every company, no matter their industry, actually does just 4 things. They market, sell, deliver, and serve that customer. And in each of those teams, I know you guys have got tons of KPIs and things that you have to meet. And probably right now in lockdown, you're trying to figure out how some of those KPIs will ever get met, or how do you report on that effectively? And that's a whole other webinar, I'm sure. But if you boil it down again to its essentials, marketing's primary job is to attract prospects close to the business. So you build brand, but you attract prospects close to the business. You want to manage that entire interaction of all of these prospects and leads. Once you've generated those leads, they get handed over to the sales team. And the sales team's job, acquire them as customers. And typically that's a systematic process. It goes to certain gates, it's tracked. I know that many of you are asked for a forecast during your sales meeting, committed deals and those good things. But frankly, the simple thing that a sales team is attempting to do is acquire a new customer. And once acquired, those promises that were made by marketing and sales, they have to be delivered by someone. And that fulfillment of the promise has to be done by, and it depends on your kind of business, whether that you're actually going and picking stock and assembling it and shipping it out to a customer, or you're delivering some kind of professional service, or maybe even a mix of both. You want to be able to understand what those commitments were and then actually deliver on them. I did hear someone again saying the other day that the marketing and sales team, they seem to be telling people about stuff that we don't quite do just yet. But the saying that we love to say at the CRM team is that marketing and sales can drive innovation. So we'll see how true that is later on in the discussion. But once you've acquired that customer and once you've fulfilled that initial order, your ongoing goal is to make sure that the services team actually retain and grow that customer over time. You've all heard the stats, and people twist them and manipulate them in terms of what those ratios actually are. But you know that it's so expensive to acquire a customer, and it's so much less expensive to serve that customer over time. But that's where your revenue really comes from. And I'm not going to go into those stats because I think you've all heard them before. But this is not a linear process. This doesn't happen once off. This is a cyclical thing. This happens over and over and over again. You need to make sure that your marketing team and sales team and delivery team are consistently engaging with the customers that you've already acquired. And that is what builds your customer life cycle. Now, in each of these different areas, we've got loads of tool sets. We've got some incredible KPIs and business measures that can actually break it down into more granular detail. And we've got some tools that tell you what you should do next based on where you are right now in your journey. So we can always unpack that a little bit later on. But with lockdown here at the moment, we've been hearing a lot of people saying, well, this is true. This is still true. The CRM circle makes sense, but the way we're engaging our customers is a bit different. We're also hearing loads of people saying that during lockdown, they're busier than they've ever been before. I know that was true for me yesterday. I had back-to-back conference calls and barely got a chance to even leave my desk. But it's thanks to things like Microsoft Teams that we're able to do that. But I know that you're also busy. So the question then becomes, well, how do you serve customers? How do you engage your customers the right way? And not get into that busy mode, that mindset where you're just wheel spinning everywhere? How do you offset some of that hassle? How do you find efficiencies and productivity gains? And the one place that we're seeing our customers actively do that is in the bot space. Now, bots are great. I mean, in many cases, they're very, very simple. They sit on a website and they'll take someone's information down. What do you need? I need this. Sorry, no one's available right now, but can you give me your email address and I will help you? And that's exactly what happens. But that gets sent off in the background and somebody else has to work on that. So again, the bot hasn't really solved its overall purpose. So what we're seeing is that companies are saying the bots are great, but how do they really fit in? And that requires us to take a step back and actually look at the strategy in a bit more detail. So in a traditional sense, let's use this example. It's just a quick animation. You'll see the clock running on the top left-hand side. And this is Paul asking for a statement on his account. And Paul's talking to Sandy. He's having a direct chat with her, which can either be online or by a telephone call. And he's saying, hey, can you please just give me a statement on my account? Sandy's getting the account details. Obviously, there would be some security checks. Sandy goes into the background and she swivel chairs between different systems to confirm that Paul is who he says he is, that his statement is accurate, and then they're going to draw that down and actually send that off to Paul. So there we go. Let's see. Thank you for holding. And the end result from our research is typically that takes between 16 and 18 minutes to resolve, which is great. That's actually not a bad turnaround time. But funny enough, if you just take Sandy's cost, you take her overhead costs, and you apply that to the 18 minutes, you start to figure out very quickly what that cost is of serving Paul just to give him a statement. And we know that, hey, there's new ways of doing that. So the second way is to use things like smart customer portals, where Paul can go and log his details, and automatically it will create a ticket in the background in the CRM system, and someone will pick that up. In this case, again, Sandy's picking it up, and she only needs to spend the time working on it that is relevant. And because it's been systematized before, some of that information has already been bubbled up. Sandy's been able to validate that very quickly, to confirm it, and then to ultimately send Paul his statement back. And we're seeing typically that gets down to about 9 minutes in total touch time in order to resolve the requirement for Paul in this instance. And again, that's great. But now, if a bot was really engaged on this, would they be able to serve the purpose? And typically the answer is no. And that's because the details that the bot has available to it are simply missing. They don't have the connections into the systems behind the scenes in order to actually bring that information to the foreground and then to send that off via the relevant channel that's secure to Paul. We're seeing that change. We're seeing that things like Microsoft Power Virtual Agent right now are able to become so much more intelligent based on the systems they can connect to, as well as the artificial intelligence that actually sits below the bot engine. And that's helping us to connect them very, very quickly to these services. And ultimately, it transforms service in this way. So here's the virtual agent asking if he can help Paul, or it can help Paul. And it's giving Paul a couple of options that are standardized to the solution. Paul wants his latest statement, his account, and instantly the bot can use the secure and approved channel to send that information off to Paul. And we're seeing that done in a minute. It is absolutely transformative in terms of cost. And think about it. If this smart bot is able to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, that means that you're able to serve your customers exactly when they want it, and you're actually able to give them exactly what they're looking for. But in some cases, we all know, having dealt with some of the silly bots that exist on websites right now, that it doesn't always give you what you need. And this smart bot is able to escalate through a process. So here, if something's wrong and the bot can't resolve, what it can actually then do is engage Sandy, which ideally in this case, Sandy's time is freed up because she's not doing all those menial tasks. She's doing tasks that actually require her to go and actually look at these details and maybe process Paul's refund and actually complete the process and send that back to Paul in order to give him all of the updates that he needs. Now, these new versions of these virtual assistants and these virtual agents are getting so smart that they transform the way we engage, but we again have to understand, where do they fit in this overall cycle? They don't remove the human requirement, they just adjust where the humans focus. And funny enough, we're seeing in some of our customers that roles are being created where they never existed before, things like bot wrangler or bot supervisor. And those are real right now, by the way, in South Africa. That's not a global thing. We've seen that right now. In fact, we had some training that we did with the Microsoft team for Africa, and we train all these grads all over the African continent. And one of the young guys in Kenya actually has a job right now as a bot supervisor, which is impressive to see. So these kind of jobs are transforming and they exist right now. But we do need to understand, where does this fit in the overall engagement cycle? And typically we look at this from an omni-channel perspective. We say, well, the normal journey looks like this. We think about customers engaging all these different levels, and we want to make sure that they can engage in those levels, but we want to be able to say, if you engage us initially on the web or via social, etc., we want to take that context, move it to the next channel, and ideally deal with the customer in the simplest way via the lowest cost channel and escalate as required. Or if someone's a VIP customer or urgently needs an escalation, to jump a few levels. And that's normal in our omni-channel type customers and contact center and service center type environments. But bots have typically played here. They've worked on the web a little bit. They've worked in that community FAQ space, maybe in some of the live chat type scenarios, and then they've typically handed them off. But this new version, this Power Virtual Agent that we're talking about, these AI-enabled capabilities are now seeing us actually spread where these services are able to be deployed. And they're actually going much further into the customer engagement value chain. They're also engaging via many, many different other channels. They're engaging in things like your Microsoft Teams environment. They're engaging on Facebook Messenger. They're engaging across Kik and Telegram and all of these other types of services. And they're engaging on the traditional thing that you would expect, which is your website. And it's transforming how people engage. But it's only because of the capability that's actually being built into these bots. Now, we then start to say, well, hang on, where do they actually play? Well, obviously they play in the customer service space. But again, if these bots are enabled the right way, it means that we find ourselves in a situation where they can actually help us upsell and cross-sell because they have the right information at the right time. We're also seeing a scenario where these bots are being used for employee self-service. And that's, again, in organizations that are very, very large, and a lot of questions are being routed around about how do we deal with certain things? How do we submit our expense claims during the lockdown period? And people are being flooded, HR is being flooded with requests. And in some cases, they're using these virtual agents to actually deal with internal customer and employee issues in the same way, in a smart and engaging way with their employees. And again, via these alternative channels inside of Teams, as a good example. So we're going to have a look at some of those things and see how they actually fit together. But the question is, if you're looking at a virtual agent and something that's a bit smarter, what platform do we need to enable that? And obviously, if you go into the web right now and you search for, give me a smart bot or smart bot technologies, there are many. And many of those services are actually really, really good. But again, as I mentioned earlier in the webinar, at the CRM team, we really thought about, well, where do we bet our business? And we chose the Microsoft platform. And this is before things like the Power Platform existed. So we've seen this go from a promise to real life. And what Microsoft have effectively done is they've built us one low-code platform that spans across Office 365 and Azure and Dynamics, and even some standalone applications for that matter. And what we're seeing is in this low-code structure that people across the organization, even outside of IT, are actually building their own applications as they need. Obviously, IT are able to apply the good governance standards and the controls. And from a security point of view, we're able to control that and lock that down as needed. But it's changing the way that people are engaging with the platform. But the Microsoft Power Platform was traditionally made up of three things. And most people know them as Power BI, Power Apps, and Power Automate. Very recently, a fourth option was added, and that's Power Virtual Agents. And I'm going to talk about that in a bit more detail in a second. But just to orientate you, the Power Platform has Power BI in it, which is really your business analytics tool set. That allows you to take data from different sources, blend it into one pane of glass, and actually get real insight into your business and understand exactly what's happening in terms of trend right now. The next is Power Apps, and that's the ability to rapidly build an application, again, using a drag and drop type scenario, and build these apps that will actually serve people inside of your business. What a lot of people don't know is that Dynamics 365, the CRM platform that we work on every single day and love and deploy for our customers, was actually rebuilt onto the Power Platform a while ago. So when we're actually editing the forms and fields in the Dynamics CRM environment, it's actually using the Power Apps editing capability. And the third option, though, is Microsoft Power Automate, and that's the automation processes. Microsoft have built hundreds and hundreds of connectors now that allow us to actually move data and trigger different processes from even services that exist beyond the Microsoft ecosystem. But that automation and workflow is giving us some efficiency. And now that Power Virtual Agents has been added to it, it's again changing the way we're able to consume those services, those first three that I've just mentioned, and then actually consume them in the virtual agent structure, which I'm about to show you. But what's really important about this Microsoft Power Platform is it sits on top of what's called the Common Data Service. So if you think about a database, all of the data that goes in through these tools lives in this data structure that Microsoft have built in their cloud called the Common Data Service, which means that we have a shared understanding of how data moves across the organization and what data looks like in the organization. So it's very easy for us to consume data. And we know exactly what a contact record looks like. We know exactly what a company record looks like, and we're able to leverage that. But again, all of these other services that Microsoft have built around that are also helping us. Sorry about that. We can't help the dogs barking when we're working from home. So we have data connectors and we have the AI builder, which enhances the platform, etc. But we'll talk about that in just a second. So moving swiftly along from there, if you use the Power Platform correctly, it really lets you do three main things. The one is to analyze what's happening inside of your business right now. So using the Power BI capability, what's actually going on right now. And then based on that analysis and insight that you've gotten, we're able to take an action. And the action that happens on the back of that, we're able to learn from. So maybe you want to build a quick app and just say, well, how do we deal with this? What kind of app do we build that makes it easy for us to share information around COVID or to track our leads and opportunities and deals, and then actually pass that back into the Power BI platform for analysis. But ultimately, once we figure out what's working, we're able to gain efficiencies by automating processes throughout our entire business. And that's all done on this overall platform. But now it does fit in with the broader ecosystem, and Microsoft talk about this as the one Microsoft story. So the Power Platform all lives on top of the Microsoft Cloud, the Azure Cloud, and it actually spans across the tool sets that I mentioned earlier, Dynamics 365 and Office 365. But I want to show you an example of how this all fits together because, hey, this is great. Like looking at all the technology and knowing that it's there and it's low code and it has all this ability to help us analyze, act, and automate stuff across the business. That's awesome. But let's have a look at a real scenario. So what I've got here is our customer service insights capability. So we're looking at an environment that has Dynamics 365 deployed, specifically the customer service instance. And the company's been using this for quite some time. So they're tracking all of their cases, everything's coming in, they're managing that escalation process and the SLAs that are associated, and they're reporting on that. But what I want to do here is show you what we're able to do with some of the artificial intelligence capability built into the customer insights platform. So I'm quickly going to change the time period and I'm going to make it more relevant for what I'm currently working on right now. And you'll see that the graphs change. The interesting thing though, is we're able to start to see emerging topics. And these are topics that are coming out based on what we're hearing inside of the cases or seeing inside of the cases. But there's 1,800 cases on one particular topic. Let's drill through into that and see it in some more detail. So there we go. There's the 1,800 cases. We can look at customer satisfaction drivers, but the main issue here is that we have a lot of unresolved cases sitting on a very few people's desks. And that's showing us that, hey, we've got some customer satisfaction issues, specifically via the web and SMS channel. It's not looking great. So let's go and look at the actual flow of this that runs through the business. So right now, if someone phones in, that's all good. It doesn't seem to get escalated and ultimately ends up resolved. That's awesome. But these other channels are a problem. So if we look at the active ones, yeah, those are coming from those channels we spoke about earlier, web and SMS. So that's a bit of a problem. We need to try and solve this. Let's go and look at the cases that are related to that particular topic and dig into why that might be the case. Here we go. So I'm going to drill into that. But all good. Okay. So let's say, well, we know that we're working on that particular type of case. Let's go and figure out how are we typically resolving that and can we actually scale that resolution? So let's go and see how that all fits together because each of those actually generates a topic. There we go. So the AI is actually telling us what these topics typically look like. And here we can train the AI model and check if any of these topics are accurate. Yeah, that looks pretty good. We can go and maybe click on, yep, agree, or we could even say if it doesn't fit, we can disagree and we can push it into another topic and we can train the AI in some more detail. But obviously we can also change some of the settings. We can change how granular the AI is in this particular scenario. And I'm just going to do that by sliding a simple slider here. I'm going to make it much broader. Or I can say, well, that might be a bit too broad. I want to try and find a bit more balance in this. And I'll adjust it back to where I believe it's going to make more sense. Happy with that. And I will save and close that. All good. So we're happy that the topics that are being generated are accurate. We can see that they're still all related to those 1,800 cases. And what we want to see is, can we take those topics and those resolutions and push them into a virtual agent so we can take some of that workload off the desks of the people who are currently battling just to meet their current requirements. Let's go and have a look at what that looks like. So if I push this into the virtual agent, this is going to be the virtual agent configuration pane. And you're going to see an example here where I have the bot up on the left-hand side. And as I begin to edit this, you're going to see that I'm able to also track where the bot is in the overall process. So I can see, do I need to troubleshoot or manipulate that in some additional detail? Let's see if I can get this to work. There we go. Okay, so let's do that again. And apologies, I'm having a little bit of an issue there. No, you think you record a demo and it will make it easier, but hey, it's always going to creep in these little demo crimes and little gremlins. Okay, let's redo that. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to restart it and see how we go. Looks good.
Paul, I've had some questions come in.
Go for it,
in the interim. So is now a good time to answer those questions? Are you all right with that?
Let's see if I can get this thing fixed. But I think if you throw out the first question, and I would actually love to try and get this fixed and then continue. But let's see how we go.
Okay, perfect. So the question that we got here is it possible to gather data and track interactions from other bots? For example, if you look at Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp, for that matter, is it possible to to integrate this into those platforms and track interactions from those platforms as well?
That's an incredible question. Let me actually jump out of this and attempt to redeem myself by showing you exactly where that happens. The spinning beach ball of death. Someone's going to say it's a Mac problem. Someone's going to say that. There's no doubt about it. I'm pretty sure that that's going to happen. So let me jump out of this. The answer is, in some ways, yes. Now, I'm going to actually open up our interface here, which is currently Chrome. And I'm actually looking at the exact same structure that I was talking about a second ago and attempting to play the video. Now, when I actually go ahead and build my bots, I'm able to publish this out to different services. And if I look at the different channels here, you'll see it's got the normal expected ones like custom website, etc. But you'll see it also includes all of these other channels: Facebook, Facebook Messenger, Telegram, etc. These are the standard channels that are currently available. So you're able to build this bot and deploy it, and actually deploy it via these different channels, which means anyone that interacts with you via Facebook, via things like Skype, via your website, all of that data will come into the virtual agent and actually go into the same common data service that I mentioned earlier on. Do you think that answers the question?
That's absolutely perfect. Thanks, Slade.
Okay, let's attempt to go back into this. If it doesn't work, we will pivot and adjust from there and see how we go. Let's have a look here. Wonderful. Okay, skip it is the way we're going to go. So we're going to go old school, and I will show you what it looks like in the actual interface. I think that's going to be the best way to do it. Perfect. Okay, so by way of orientation, here we are on the homepage of the Power Virtual Agent environment. And I've just got a test bot up here, guys. I didn't go and build out a ton of extra effort here. I didn't want to go and hack it in a way that went, hey, Paul's been building this thing for weeks, and now it looks kind of smart. That doesn't make any sense. We're pretty sure he's hacking it behind the scenes. This has literally been deployed just a few minutes before this particular call. So what I want to ask this bot, which I haven't trained at all, is what is CRM? And the bot's going to come back and go, I have absolutely no idea what you're currently talking about. And that's obvious because I actually haven't trained the bot yet. So how on earth would it have known? Well, it requires us to feed it with topics. So let's go and have a look at how I add those topics. Now, this is a common sort of question we get. We get guys going, this is wonderful. The platform looks great. I can rapidly build out the bot. But then how do I maintain this thing? And I mentioned bot wranglers and bot supervisors a bit earlier on. But hey, we don't want to go and try and conceptualize every single topic that someone might actually come up with. So the earlier scenario I had there is that this customer service insights environment was automatically generating the topics for us, which I could have pulled into this particular interface. But there's also another simple way. So let's go and suggest some topics. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to our company blog. I'm going to copy this link, and I'm going to ask the bot to go and look at our website and actually bring back some of those topics. So what it's going to look for, it's going to apply the artificial intelligence, and it's going to go and say, well, what other stuff can we find? It's going to take a couple of minutes, but it's going to look for questions, it's going to look for answers, and it begins to apply some of that fuzzy logic. So it starts to use different words so we can actually manipulate that without having to do too much work. And it'll begin to understand maybe what those different sentences mean, what the syntax means, and it will start to make inferences about what questions might go with which answers and vice versa. So as that happens, you're going to see I currently have 0 suggested topics, but in a couple of seconds, it's going to return a whole lot of topics based on actually looking directly at our blog. And under the suggested topics section, it's going to actually automatically pull through a whole lot of those options for us. Let's give it a moment. Benno, while it's doing that, is there any other question?
There has been a question that has come through, and I think you're really busy answering it at the moment. Okay. The question was that it's typically extremely hard to maintain and train these bots. I mean, it's quite expensive to get someone in to come and build your bots and train these bots. How's this any different?
Yeah, we're going to show you that in a split second. It's obviously running in the background. While that's running and updating the topics, I wanted to just show you, I mean, as I'm building this, I also want to understand what the branch logic looks like. So what's quite important here is that as I'm actually testing my bots over here on the left-hand side, I want to be able to see exactly where I am in this process. So if I actually track the differences between topics, as I go through saying things like hello, which are standard, it'll actually begin to show me exactly where I am in the overall process, and it'll work me through this. So it'll start to show me where the branch logic is. It'll start to help me edit this. And obviously, one of the things we want to try and do is make it very, very quick from an input point of view for our customer who's working on the other side of this, and make it simple for the bot to understand in the beginning. So we're able to give very simple options around the pick lists that have come through from the prior settings we put up. And obviously that'll branch and it'll start to provide those points of information as well as the secondary components that are needed. But as you just mentioned, like how complex is it to keep training these things? Because building this out is great. And obviously editing this as we go is easy, and we can sort of go and say, add new options, etc. But we don't have to think about every single option that we go through. We want to actually go and see if we can't bring some of that data through and actually automatically go and pick that up from our website. So there you go. The website trawling has already been done by the AI, and it's got 15 new suggested topics. And it's automatically gone and said, hey, look, I found a whole lot of things that actually might make sense here. So do we need sales? Do we need Excel to help our sales team excel? What's new in Dynamics 365 for sales? And I can go ahead and select all of these different options, and I can promote them into the standardized topics that I have for the rest of the service. And as soon as I put into that, I can decide if I turn them on or off. So you'll see those options here, and I can decide, hey, that's great. Let's turn that on and turn that on. All great. And so the bot you'll see updating on the left-hand side of the screen. And so now if I go back and I ask the bot any of those questions, it should actually return an answer. So what's new in Dynamics 365 for sales? And now if I send that in, it should automatically come up with an answer without me having to do any extra work besides just pointing it to my website. And obviously it provides a link, so I can actually go and click on that and it'll go out. It also begins to learn, was this successful? Did it actually work? So if I say yes, that's fantastic. It'll say, that's awesome. Please give me a satisfaction rating. And I can say, well, it was pretty good. It was a bit of a long-winded answer and I had to go out to the website. So I'll say that that's good. And all of that information actually then gets stored into this common data service that I mentioned earlier on. And so I say, well, I don't need any help on anything else. All happy, that's great. And remember that that will all go into the background and allow me to actually go and update my analytics around that. So once I'm happy with my bots, I can go ahead and publish this into whatever one of those services are that I chose, or all of those services for that matter. And here I've just published it out to a demo website. And obviously I have the ability to go and ask it those exact same questions that we spoke about there. And I can share this with my organization for people to test, and then I can deploy it out to the rest of the org as I would need from there. Now, if I go back into the PowerPoint instance, just to show you, not that same video, because that's obviously not happy, the analytics that come out on the back of this. The analytics are automatically generated. This is a standard dashboard. We haven't manipulated this in any way. And what's happening here is it's showing exactly how many sessions are live, what the abandon rates look like, where people abandoned, why they abandoned, and ultimately what the customer satisfaction score was. And all of those components, especially around customer satisfaction score, we don't have to do any work on. As long as the customers are clicking one of those emojis, etc., we're able to bring that information back and run it from there. But I did mention earlier on that this is part of the Microsoft Power Platform. And that means that these bots don't just live on their own. They don't just get fed with all of this knowledge-based type capability and get told, hey, look, go and service these customers via these platforms. What actually ends up happening is that we're able to combine it with the other services in the Microsoft Power Platform. And this is normally what breaks people's minds. They go, but this is complex. It's not. All we're actually saying is that the Power Virtual Agent allows us to use these other services like Microsoft Power Automate, which is that automation process, to go and update other systems with information or to return information from those other systems. So unfortunately, the little video clip that I had there, which I can share with you afterwards if you like, once I fixed it, will actually allow us to show you that we can trigger in that workflow process a flow which goes out to another system and returns information about the customer and about their previous purchases, and then automatically let the customer go, yeah, I'm talking about this particular purchase where I have a problem, and I can actually contextually understand that. But the data doesn't live in the virtual agent. The data lives in my system of record, the ERP system or the CRM system for that matter. The same applies to triggering actions post the call or post the interaction with the agent. I can trigger an email. I can update a case record. I can close a case. And that's all just from the Power Automate capability. And that's also a drag and drop type structure. You don't actually have to go and build a whole lot of code in order to make those automations happen across your entire business. And right now, if you're licensed for some of the Office 365 capability or Microsoft 365, you'll probably find that you have access to these tools right away. But the other tools are also relevant. So Power BI, that dashboard that you saw earlier on, being able to analyze the data and add other pieces of data into that and contextually understand it, that's the tool set that will help us blend all of that information together. And then the third one was Power Apps. So we can actually take that bot, that virtual agent that we built, and use it to update the common data service, which means that when someone picks up their mobile device and opens up the Power App that they're working on right now, maybe it's an approval, maybe it's something to do with, hey, this is an escalated case because the customer actually wasn't happy, it automatically renders itself on the Power App and a person can take an action. And again, that would all go back into the same data structure, which then triggers the processes that are relevant. But we often have questions that lead to comments like, well, our customer data actually is everywhere. So it's great that we build a Microsoft Power Automate process of flow and we go fetch data from one of those systems. But what happens if our data is everywhere? How do we deal with that? And in the same tool set that we're just talking about is a tool called Customer Insights. So Microsoft Dynamics 365 Customer Insights. And this tool allows us to take data from different services and aggregate it into one place. So we know that there's data inside your business all over the place. We know it's constantly in flux. We know there's data outside of your organization in third parties that maybe you have access to. They do data dumps or you have access to their databases based on your kind of business. But what we're able to do with Customer Insights logic is to apply the standard connectors, and there's over 300 of them. And we're able to actually ingest data to map, match, and merge those records, and ultimately to begin to automatically create a single customer record. And then from there, we're able to enrich it and actually go through the whole process of making sure we understand that customer very specifically around demographic, transactional, and behavioral information. That is then the kind of structure that we can then use Power BI, et cetera, to actually analyze and understand, and be able to apply some of the machine learning algorithms, et cetera, and see where we have some cohorts for potential upsell or cross-sell. But these analytics give us the insights on top of the single record of a customer. And then ultimately we can push that out into these other services. So on the top right-hand side of your screen, you'll see the Power Platform. And inside of that is the Power Virtual Agent. So I can actually make sure that the Power Virtual Agent can consume this myriad of data that lives in all these different places in our business via the Customer Insights logic. And I can actually truly service Paul because I know exactly who he is, what his account numbers are, what his defining characteristics are, what his previous purchases look like. And I can even use that for some of the upsell and cross-sell type scenarios. Remember that all of those interactions, as I mentioned, all go into that common data service, which enrich the database and the understanding of those customers, and ultimately run through this exact same process, which then means we get even better understanding of what people who look like Paul typically do, or what does Paul's preference typically look like. So I'm going to pause there and I'm going to ask Wayne, are there any other questions?
There's some really good questions here, Slade. So the first question is, how are spelling errors typically dealt with? Because one of the big frustrations with the bot is if you don't know the exact question, you don't get an answer. So how's that dealt with in this scenario?
It's an excellent question. There's actually three things that happen. The first is that fuzzy logic is applied. So that means that if you kind of spell poorly, like I was doing on that earlier example, I spelled dynamics incorrectly, it actually automatically understands what that is and provides an answer that it believes it should be based on that inference. So that's the artificial intelligence kicking in. If, however, it doesn't pick up that particular spelling error, if it's that bad, if someone spelled it that badly, and it says, hey, I failed to resolve this, that failure actually is something that can be reported on. And the bot wrangler, the bot supervisor, or your partner that's helping you build this would actually be able to see that and start to include some of the additional logic. If it was a one-off, you probably disregard it. If it's happening a lot, you then begin to include it into the actual service. But the third scenario there is that you try and remove any time where someone's actually having to type. We call it a happiness journey. We're trying to find the happiest way through this entire process. And you saw that up on my little demo, I had a couple of pick list options, some choices. We try and make those options come up more frequently than not. So that the person isn't actually manually typing, they're selecting from the option set, and that does away with the spelling errors and issues almost right away.
That's awesome. The second question that I've got here is, in the examples that you've used, you've always sort of initiated the bot query. Can the bot be based on a customer database to initiate an engagement? So, for example, based on customer health or temperatures or whatever, can the bot actually initiate an assessment of health? Through a series of automated health-related questions to determine the risk level, for example.
It's funny you're using those terms, health and risk. I mean, there's actually right now a scenario where Microsoft Power Virtual Agents being used to do COVID assessments, and they're actually being driven out automatically. So even though the service exists on its own, and I know I'm taking this very literally as a health check, but what's actually happening is it's actually a driven process to the end client or end patient in this particular scenario. And that can be triggered by a number of different scenarios. One is SMS, another is email. And once that's triggered, then the bot can actually engage and actually ask the right questions of the human and get that information back. But in a traditional sense, from an enterprise point of view, what we're seeing is that based on a customer status, maybe there's a satisfaction level that's an issue, we can again use those same services to initiate the engagement with the virtual agent to the customer. And depending on the channel that we choose, we can trigger that using the Microsoft Power Automate capability. Did you want to add anything else onto that, Vaynant?
No, the question was very much around COVID and can it be used in those scenarios? So I think what we should do is just publish that link to the website where that is currently running as a scenario. It would be a good idea. So the next question that we've got here is, what Office 365 license is required to use Power Apps, or is it separately licensed?
I'm going to bounce the one straight back to you, Vaynant. I think you're the best person to answer that on this particular call.
Okay, awesome. So you'll find that with many of the Office 365 licenses, you are licensed for the use of Power Apps and the Power Platform for that matter. There might be specific scenarios where you would require additional Azure consumption, for example, or depending on the number of queries that you run with Power Automate, you might require some additional capacity in that scenario as well. So it really depends on what it is that you want to do with the Power Platform, on whether the licenses that you currently have with your Office 365 environment is suffice or not. But what we will do, because this is a great question, is we'll actually publish a little page on our website as well, that just highlights what is included with Office 365 and what is typically required if we want to run the Power Virtual Agent, or we would like to run, for example, the analytics scanning capability, for example, or AI capability. So we'll definitely do that. It's a great question, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And obviously, from a first technology point of view, engage your account manager on this. Your account manager has a lot of insight into not only your environment, but exactly what the platform is currently capable of and where you might need some additional capabilities.
Great. So the next statement is that is it possible to integrate this bot with my ERP environment or with my e-commerce environment, so that when I run a query, does it contextually know who I am? Does it know what transactions I've placed in the past? Does it know what kinds of warranties I might have access to? Is it possible to contextually refer to me so that I don't have to ask the questions? It actually prompts me in a way.
I'm wondering, do I risk trying to replay that scenario that I had earlier on? What do you think? Should I hit the play button?
I don't think you've got anything to lose. Don't you have the video just on the side? Shouldn't we?
It actually is the video, and it's embedded. So that might be the reason why that was failing. But to answer that question, that is exactly what this particular scenario is that I was attempting to showcase. So what it was actually going ahead and doing is actually pulling in the data from those other services and automatically actually providing that information. So let's have a look, even if I just maybe pause it here. In this particular scenario that we built out, the customer was trying to solve an issue with a printer. Great example in all of these demos. And the printer is IoT enabled, so it was actually the bot was able to communicate to the printer and pull back what that error actually was and provide a resolution process to that error. But what it was actually specifically showing was what are the pre-purchases that individual had made. So because of the integration with the ERP solution, it was able to say that Alyssa, in this case, had purchased these two printers. Which one was the one she was experiencing the issue with? And then she could select it. It would actually go off in the background, run the IoT process, attempt to reset the printer, return the error, run the resolution process and check that it was resolved, and then ultimately drive an upsell, cross-sell process by saying, hey, we see that you've bought 12 cartridges in the last X months. Wouldn't you prefer to use the subscription service, which is 10% cheaper, and will actually commit you to a year of cartridges and just keep them coming through on a natural basis without you having to think about it? And Alyssa could go yes, and it would go off into the background and create the order for her. So that process was completely automated in the virtual agent in the video demo that we had over here. But if you share that information with us later on, we'll actually be able to share that and maybe show you the exact video of how that all fits together. But 100%, it can be integrated into those kinds of scenarios. And as I mentioned earlier, the Power Virtual Agent isn't just the simple, very basic bot that does basic Q&A. It can make inferences, and it requires the ability to leverage these other services in order to become intelligent, in inverted commas.
That's perfect. There's no other questions at the moment. If you maybe want to open up for other questions.
That is perfect. So let's wrap it up. We're almost at the top of the hour anyway. And if you wouldn't mind, if you do have any other questions, please let us know. If you don't, and you just want to reach out to us, it's really, really simple. So the crmteam.com is our direct our direct website. If you wanted to go to the Power Virtual Agent one, I'll jump back to that in a split second, and you'll see that link come up on screen. So there it is. It's the crmteam.com/power-virtual-agent. Very simple, and you can reach out to us with a little contact form on the top right-hand side of the screen, and we can send you some of these other little videos once I've got them working again. Alternatively, you can just email myself or Wynand. And the benefit of being one of the co-founders of the business is that our email addresses are super simple. Paul@thecrmteam.com or Wynand@thecrmteam.com. Are there any other questions? And we can dive into those.
None at the moment, Slade.
Okay, great. So let's close it up. Thank you so much for coming and attending the webinar today. I'm pretty sure you're all extremely busy and staying on top of things. I hope that you all stay healthy and look forward to the President's address this evening. I'm pretty sure we'll learn exactly what the uplift of lockdown is going to look like, and hopefully the slow release of it. I'm pretty sure most of us are quite excited to go out to restaurants again at some point. Obviously, maintain social distance. And in this photo, we're not, but that was taken pre-COVID. So we look forward to engaging with you even more and hearing exactly about your specific requirements and assisting you from there. Thank you so much for your time today.